from the BT-7, and with its wide tracks and powerful diesel engine, it was capable of traversing ground that would be impossible to any other tank of its weight. The T-34's armour was thick and well sloped to deflect anti-tank rounds. The tank was armed with a high-velocity 75mm gun, better than any other tank gun in the world. With such a powerful weapon, the T-34 could engage and destroy an enemy at long range with little risk to itself. In the 12 months up to the German invasion, the Soviet Union produced almost 1,200 T-34s, and in spite of initial teething troubles, they would have an effect on the course of the battle, out of all proportion to their numbers. The Petlyakov PE-2 entered frontline service with the Soviet Air Force in late 1940. Although designed as a high-altitude fighter, it was as a light bomber that the aircraft became one of the most useful weapons in the Russian armory. A popular aircraft with the men who flew it, the PE-2 was easy to handle, stable in a dive, and capable of very accurate bombing. It was also faster than the German 109E fighter, although when it encountered the later 109F, it had to depend for survival on its high-altitude capability, and bombing accuracy suffered as a result. The PE-2 would prove one of the most successful aircraft of its type in any Allied Air Force, and it would be updated throughout the war. Although only 458 were in service at the start of Operation Barbarossa, before the battle was over, the aircraft would take a very heavy toll of German armour and supply columns. Before Stalin's purge, the Red Army had been an innovative and highly professional force. The loss of a whole generation of highly trained men had left it desperately lacking skilled commanders of all ranks. There was a wave of early promotions, and thousands of officers suddenly held commands well beyond their abilities. Of those leading regiments, barely more than 10% had been trained above the level of junior lieutenant. A massive training program was mounted, particularly aimed at infantry officers, but there was little time. The situation was so serious that 4,000 ex-commanders were released from labor camps or brought back from disgrace. The rapid expansion of the Russian Air Force posed even greater training problems than those faced by the army. Pilots took a great deal of time to produce, and the flying schools were overburdened and ill-equipped. There was also a shortage of combat-experienced instructors. Many Russian pilots would fight the veterans of the Luftwaffe with only 15 hours flying time behind them, and even amongst the better trained, tactical skills were extremely poor. In Directive 21, Hitler's order for the attack on Russia, he had given a date of May the 15th, by which time all preparations must be complete. By the beginning of the month, nearly 80 German divisions were already in place, their movements covered by an elaborate campaign of deception and disinformation. Dozens of forward airfields had been built in secret, and vast quantities of fuel, stores and ammunition stockpiled close to the jumping-off areas. However, there were already signs that Hitler's timetable was falling to pieces. The winter of 1940 had been exceptionally long and harsh, and the eastern frontier regions were still a quagmire. Neither had the army yet received anything like the number of trucks it needed. With a postponement looking ever more likely, events in the south soon made it inescapable. In October 1940, Greece had been invaded by the Italians, but the Greeks had succeeded in driving them back to Albania. The British sent an expeditionary force to help Greece, suddenly posing a grave threat to Germany's Romanian oil supplies. Adolf Hitler was furious at the British intervention and ordered the invasion and occupation of Greece. The Greek campaign was intended to be a simple operation, and Hitler thought he could count on the support of Yugoslavia. However, on March the 27th, an anti-German faction, encouraged by British agents, mounted a coup and deposed the Yugoslav government. Hitler was forced to improvise. On April the 6th, German troops, led by powerful panzer formations, swept into both Yugoslavia and Greece. Until the armoured units could be retrieved from the Balkans, the invasion of the Soviet Union would have to wait. The new date for Operation Barbarossa was June the 22nd. The defeat of Yugoslavia took the Germans only 12 days. It was a savage campaign in which the capital Belgrade was bombed into rubble, killing 17,000 civilians. 2 more weeks and Greece was also overrun. By the end of April, the British Expeditionary Force had been evacuated by sea, leaving thousands of its men prisoners and abandoning most of its heavy equipment. As soon as the Balkan campaign was over, German armoured forces and headquarters units began to trickle northwards to join the massive forces already assembling in Romania, Poland and East Prussia. Meanwhile, reconnaissance units of the Luftwaffe worked at a frantic pace. Every available hour of daylight was used to plot Russian troop concentrations, supply dumps, headquarters and airfields, and mark them down for destruction. For the invasion of Russia, fully 75% of the entire German army, more than 3 million men, was assembled into 3 massive army groups. The armoured fists of the attack deployed more than 3,500 tanks, and the ground forces were supported by 2,500 aircraft. It was an enormous effort,
and there was no possibility that it could be